Hey, folks, it's Mark Barsotti. I'm proud to present tonight part one of a long interview with the late, great writer Harlan Ellison. Well over an hour, maybe one of the longest that continuous interviews Harlan ever did, or certainly it is for the last decade of his life. So since he needs no introduction, we'll get right to Harlan.
Okay, Mark.
I gave you enough time to get finished.
Oh, yeah. I was in the midst of answering some questions that had been asked of me in the pavilion, and it was a long post.
Cool.
Now it's done.
Okay, I've got two phone recorders rigged up here for redundancy purposes.
Okay, now is this, are you going to transcribe this and then write it up, or is it going to be broadcast?
Transcribed.
Transcribed, okay. Then if you're on a line, my computer's on the fax line. I usually have interviewers call me back on that line because there's no call waiting. It's possible someone may try to call. If they do, I'll put you on hold for a moment.
Okay. Before we get started, I want to ask you, is there a photo you'd like to use for the piece?
Well, there are any number of photos up on the website. And go to the Barber Gallery Steve Barber Gallery.
Right.
For other pictures of me, there's a wonderful Patton Oswalt photo of me in the barber chair with the switchblade knife. That's kind of cute.
Yes, I've seen that one. Yeah.
But Barber has done some really good stuff, and we've got. If you need us to mail you a photo, we can mail you a photo, but probably a lot, as long as you give credit to the photographer.
Okay. Yeah, I could probably get the one from Steve's. Yeah, I was thinking maybe if you didn't have an idea, the one I took to you and Susan at the restaurant when I were up there a couple years ago.
Anything you want to use is fine, as long as as long as the photographer is credited.
Of course. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started officially here. Harlan Ellison interview, August 3rd, 2013. Harlan, it's a pleasure to be speaking with you today.
Mark, it's always a pleasure to speak to you. We're a longtime friends.
Thank you.
And both Brian and I thank you for the interview.
At the MadCon Science Fiction Convention in Wisconsin in 2010, you famously told the audience, "I'm dying." Since then, you've won another Nebula Award for How Interesting a Tiny Man. Bug Fuck, the Useless Wisdom of Harlan Ellison was published in 2011. The graphic novel version of Phoenix Without Ashes hit the New York Times bestseller list. Pulling a Train and Getting in the Wind, two collections of your pulp stories out of print for half a century, came out last fall. And a couple weeks ago, of course, DC Comics published a new graphic novel, Seven Against Chaos. So, like Twain, fortunately, reports of your death were greatly exaggerated. But how much are you enjoying the third act of your life and career?
Well, as Mark Twain said, the reports of my demise have been greatly exaggerated. How it came to be, he said with the accent on the B, that I announced that I was dying was that 3 years ago, I perceived that I was quite ill, didn't know what it was, and since I have had despite a quadruple bypass about 14 years ago, and a stent about 8 or 9 years ago for a valve that had closed from the original bypass, I've been remarkably free of illnesses, with the exception of chronic fatigue syndrome, which I've had apparently most of my life. And right around the time of that MadCon, at which I was scheduled to appear in Wisconsin, I began to feel terribly depressed, very, very low, the worst I had ever, I guess it was the lowest point in my life. And I was scheduled to go into Cedar Sinai in a couple of days, and I was in bed. I was bedridden. And I called John Manzo at the MadCon and said, I'm not going to make it. But from my hospital bed, if you will put up a microphone on the stage during my scheduled speeches, and I will answer all questions from the hospital as if I were there. Just, put up a big sign, say, pay no attention, man behind the curtain. They put up a big sign, and they did a poster and an ad that said Harlan Ellison's last big con. So that if anybody objected to me not being there and wanted their money back, they said, well, Ellison conned us, and I would have to take the rap for having not performed. Well, about 3 days before I was to go, John Manzo appeared at my bed at the took a red eye and appeared at my bed, the end of my bed, with 200 copies of the Harlan Ellison Unrepentant Harlequin book that they had printed up. And I was lying on my back signing them for a day. And then he flew back, and I got so angry at that my adrenaline kicked in, and I went to the convention. But it was a nightmare. I went blind in one eye. I actually attacked 2 people. And just prior to going, I got a call from an interviewer, much like you, in Madison, who said, I heard you're not coming, and what's going on, and what are you sick with? And well, they didn't have a name for it because I hadn't gone to the hospital yet. And no one knew what it was I had. And he kept after me, and he would not stop nagging me and chivying me and harassing me until finally, in frustration, the nasty side of my nature, Mark, which is there, kicked in, and I said, what part of I'm dying here don't you get, you asshole? And he, of course, ran with that as the headline.
Sure.
So because it had been so widely gone viral, in the interim between John Manzo coming to having the book signed and me soldiering up and going and actually doing the job where I signed books for 7.5 hours on one day and spoke for 8 hours on the platform, I had to address it. So I, quote, famously said I was, dying. Well, when I got back, things went from bad to worse, and there were more hospitals. There were several hospitals that I was in, and over the period of the following year, things got about as bad as they can possibly get, short of being, plowed under with a backhoe. And I was drifted into the embrace of the Wizard of Oz, a neuropharmacologist who figured out that I had what they now call, it's got a name, clinical depression, which may be the latest manifestation of the chronic fatigue syndrome that I have been sporting most of my adult life. And they began putting me on drugs, neuropharmaceuticals. And I have become, after a life of abstinence in which I do not drink and I've not used dope and I've never taken pills, because I was on the road since I was 13 and I saw how that fucked people up. I have now become someone who is Big Pharma's
poster boy
response to the W.C. Fields, question, ain't there a sucker born every minute?
Okay. That list I just read of all the things that have come out since then, did I miss any noteworthy events?
Well, I'm on the New York Times bestseller list with 7 Against Chaos the second week. And that's a hell of a milestone for me because Paul Chadwick and Ken Stacy and I worked on that project for 10 years. It was 20 years ago that I created 7 Against Chaos, but it took 10 years for DC to get it out. And it's a great milestone. But I have had 15 books in the last 11 months. If you go to HarlanEllisonBooks.com, which I hope people will do, and I hope you will mention in this interview prominently, you will see a whole series of books that we've been publishing that are being done by my imprimatur, Edgeworks Abbey.
We'll insert plug here.
I'm sorry?
We'll insert plug here.
Okay. I'm doing them with Jason Davis, who is my editor, and we've done 4 volumes of my screenplays called Brain Movies, the most recent of which feature Brain Movies number 4 features a 2-hour movie that I wrote called Cutter's World. That's one of my favorite pieces of writing. It's never been seen before. And we've done books of short stories that were promised in years past, like Rough Beasts, early work that has not been reprinted in 20, 30 years. And to come full circle to answer the question, how am I handling this third act, I'm sitting here midway between drenched in hubris and gloating that I have sustained a career for 60 years, but feeling a lot like one of the survivors of that downed aircraft on the show Lost, who's sitting on the beach watching the waves roiling in and out, and then, not paying much attention, then idly turning around and noticing that an entire continent has grown up behind it. And so now I'm getting love letter reviews on, for instance, my first novel, Web of the City, which was just reprinted by Hard Case Crime, and the reviews are like Dumas or Victor Hugo or James Fenimore Cooper. They're saying even at age 20, this guy had chops. And I sit here, you have to be a real schmuck not to gloat over a 4-star review, but there's always that nagging little imp in my mind that says, where the fuck were you when I needed you at the beginning? Because it was hard times then writing for a penny a word, and I wrote Web of the City in the Army when I was in basic training. So here it is, 50 years later, being treated like a silver-maned icon of 20th century hard-boiled literature. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. He recently had a birthday, and I would wonder sometimes if it must freak you out to sit back and realize he just turned 79, because I don't even believe in 52. But I'm 52.
Yeah. Well, since I always thought I was going to buy it at age 13, dueling with Richelieu's guards on the parapets, to find myself at age 79 is really between a rock and a hard place. What was it? It was George Burns, the great comedian, who said, when you see a dog standing on its hind legs, dancing around and whistling, it's not amazing how well he does it. It's that he can do it at all.
Right.
And I see me at 79 sitting here, and I just had a physical about 3 weeks ago, with no heart problems, no brain problems, no prostate, no cancer, except for this clinical depression and the 11 pills I take a day. I'm in perfectly good health, and my brain does seem to be ratiocinating in the usual manner.